This episode is brought to you by Farmers Insurance.
The main suspect in the blast that killed Russian journalist Vladlen Tatarsky is to remain in custody for 2 months, while authorities complete their investigation into her alleged role in the terrorist attack. A preliminary inquiry points to Ukraine's possible involvement. Russia delivers its nuclear-capable Iskander missile systems to Belarus, hot on the heels of NATO officially accepting Finland into the bloc. And the ex-chief of the French cement company, found guilty of paying off Islamic State in Syria, claims French intelligence played a key role in the firm's dealings with terrorists. Plus, supporters and opponents of Donald Trump rally in New York as he's set to appear in court to become the country's first former president to face criminal charges. A very warm welcome.
Visit consumercellular.tv.
Some things just make you feel more alive than others. Like the rush of adrenaline from an SUV that roars from 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Jaguar delivers that thrill every day. The F-Pace, how Jaguar makes an SUV.
Will Turkey ratify Sweden's NATO membership? Stockholm says it can't fulfill all Ankara's demands. As the bloc's membership requires unanimous approval, what would make Turkey change its mind? And what does all of this mean for NATO's future? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. One of the many fallouts of Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been that previously neutral Nordic countries.
Alright, so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low 350 F-Sport handling package. So this one, doesn't have any hybridization or anything like that. I will be sampling all the different powertrains here, so stay tuned for all the different, powertrains for this vehicle. But as far as this one goes, right off the line here, it's nice and responsive, good throttle response, good braking response. Everything just feels very natural, very easy as far as driving goes. Visibility is also great. The nice, pretty thin A-pillars. I like it, again, they're further back here, so you have a great view forward. Hood drops down nicely now that it's even lower than before. And view out of the back is also great. And you also have a camera rearview mirror as an option now if you'd like to give you an even better view if you have, people in the back seat there that normally would block your view. And otherwise, so here for the F-Sport handling and for the F-Sport performance, you do get adaptive dampers here. So that will change depending on the drive mode and of course the road conditions as well. So we're just in the normal mode currently, just cruising through a winery here at very low speeds. But the ride is very smooth, and I already spent about an hour riding in one of these previously, and it's really comfortable. It's really smooth, even smoother ride if that's something you're looking for. But right off the bat here, let's turn out onto this back road here and see how the 350. So I'll do launch control here. Away we go. Nice strong engine. So one of the big things here with the 350 is the brand new engine that it gets. So it now runs a 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It does 275 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque. And while that horsepower is down by 20, the torque is up by 52 pound-feet. So you get a nice extra shove there from this turbo engine, even though you are down a little bit on horsepower and cylinder count. In reality, you will have a very punchy vehicle. So it does a 7.2 seconds 0 to 60, which which isn't mind-blowing or anything, but still very solid performance. One thing though about this engine is it now does require premium gas. The regular RX, previously was the V6, you could run regular. Now premium is required. Most of the other competitors run turbo engines as well that also require premium. So, you know, not a huge differentiator here, but just worth noting for use of the old RX, you are going to have to now run premium. And I'm going to put up into sport mode here and see how the response is in this mode. Here we go. Okay, still a little bit of a slow response. The main holdup here is the 8-speed automatic, which doesn't immediately understand that I want to get full performance until a split second or so later after it's, you know, kind of flooded through. But it's a good amount of punch still nonetheless. And this 8-speed auto, you know, is pretty responsive overall. I will go ahead and try out the manual shifting here. See how that does. Okay, downshift's pretty quick so far. All right, upshifts. All right, it has a mind of its own. It actually didn't even respond to my upshift request that time. So it's the same kind of experience you get in this 8-speed automatic previously. You know, it's not sporty as far as the shifting goes, unfortunately. Now the 8-speed is unique here to this F-Sport version. You go for the 500, you have a 6-speed automatic. I'll be testing that out here in a couple of minutes. But it's 8-speed otherwise, you do get across the board on all other 350s as far as the regular gas version goes. The hybrid does run an ECVT. This engine should be a little bit more fuel efficient as well compared to the old V6. So it's rated at 24 mpg combined, and so, you know, a good improvement, I believe, you know, over the V6. And so that'll be nice. You know, in practice, we'll see, you know, sometimes turbo engines can be a little more thirsty than naturally aspirated engines, but, you know, it should be a nice improvement there as far as that goes. But of course, you do have the options of the regular hybrid, the plug-in hybrid as well, if you do want to have, you know, better fuel economy than when you get here in the 350. One nice thing about the RXs is that they have lost weight. So in addition to having the more spread out wheelbase that's longer and the wider track, which should also help with handling, you also do have up to 198 pounds of weight loss here for the new RXs. Now this 350 as it sits is about 4,310 pounds, which I believe is about 70 or so pounds dropped from the previous generation. And so, you know, I mean, that should certainly help with handling. But what I've noticed, I did spend a week with a regular RX for the old previous generation version with the F-Sport package on it, and what I can say is that this certainly feels a lot tighter. And I also have to add that even on this slightly rougher road we're on now, I mean, you get a little bit of road noise, but it's really nice and, you know, pretty quiet in here, and does a really good job of, again, just feeling luxurious. Even, again, with these adaptive dampers in their stiffer setting, you can totally drive around sport mode all the time, and it certainly wouldn't beat you up or anything. And now, hustling it on this tighter back road here, it's really dynamic and feels so much better than the previous generation RX, in my opinion. I mean, it's just a lot tighter, just feels like there's way less body motions, especially here, you know, this F-Sport handling version with these adaptive dampers. You know, it certainly helps. And but even, you know, these all-season tires, I think, do a really good job of giving you a good amount of grip, considering, you know, they're not sporty tires really. You can't get sportier Michelin Pilot Sport 4 SUV tires on the 500. Now I'll touch more on that in a minute. But on this very fun, windy road, I mean, this thing really keeps up nicely. Again, considering, you know, the setup and the fact that it still is trying to blend both the luxury and the performance. I think they did a really nice job with the tuning, but it still, you know, glides over all these bumps very nicely. But I'm actually having a good time here in this. I think it's just, it gives me confidence. The steering is really nice and precise and nicely weighted, especially here, again, in the sport mode. And it's just, it's a vehicle that, I mean, I usually don't like pushing, you know, SUVs like this very much, but this one actually is really fun to push. I think the only SUV that still feels a little more dynamic than this, that this kind of competes with, is the Acura RDX, which I know is slightly smaller. Maybe this competes more with the MDX. Both the RDX and the MDX, in my opinion, still are a little more dynamic with their true torque vector and all-wheel drive. But aside from those, I'd say that this is probably my favorite as far as handling goes currently. It really feels nice. And again, this is just the regular 350 version, which does have, you know, the performance focus here with the F-Sport handling package. But I'm very curious to try out the 500H F-Sport performance. So let's go try that out and see how that does. All right, so now I'm in the 500H F-Sport performance version. And so we're going to go ahead and put it up into the sport mode here. And let's see how this one accelerates with its much more aggressive setup here, and the hybrid component as well. But here we go, turn it on in this back road, see how it does. Here we go. Wow, all right, definitely a little more responsive. Pulls very, very nicely. good strong performance. So this takes that same 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, then adds on electric motors front and rear. It has a more powerful rear e-axle than any other previous Lexus or Toyota product, and so it gives you a good amount of horsepower over a regular 350. So you have now 366 horsepower in this setup, 406 pound-feet of torque, and then it'll drop your 0 to 60 from that 7.2 seconds of the 350 down to now 5.9 seconds 0 to 60 time here for this version. And so the rest of the 6-speed automatic transmission, by the way, as well. We'll try out some manual shifts here. Okay, 3rd gear. Still, it's like I'm upshifting and it's not even responding. I wish the manual shifting was more responsive, especially in something that is supposed to be performance oriented. I wish this was a little quicker. Downshifts are still fine. It's just the upshifts where it really just kind of has a mind of its own and does whatever it feels like doing, which isn't great. But anyway, aside from that, it's still a good amount of power. And typically with these automatics, it's better just to leave them to do their own thing anyway. Another acceleration here. Wow, okay, I really like how that electric motor in the back definitely gives you a little bit of extra zip right off the line and some initial punch before the engine, comes on full steam and, continues on with the rest of the, acceleration here. And it's really a sporty setup. So it's the direct 4 all-wheel drive system here is what they're calling this, which will be the same branding as the RZ and that fully electric all-wheel drive system. But clearly this is, a little bit different. But it had that same more powerful rear electric motor and then the gas engine powering the front here. And it's punchy though, and it's actually very impressive with the amount of torque. Typically, it will be a 70% front, 30% rear torque split, but it can go all the way up to 80% of the available torque going to the rear. So a very rear bias setup, and I'm going to be testing that out here on some windy roads. But it also just means that whenever you do have power transfer and stuff under acceleration, that back motor is going to really kick in and keep things, nice and level, but really, slingshot you forward there with that rear e-motor. And so it's a pretty cool setup. And whenever you want to slow all this power down, you do have stronger 6-piston front brakes here on the 500s. And so that definitely, gives you a bit of extra confidence as well to slow all that power down and the extra mass down as well. So these do weigh a good bit more. So curb weight for one of these is about 4,750 pounds. Versus, the 4,300 pounds or so of a regular 350 F-Sport handling package, which I guess is why it's appropriate that that's the handling F-Sport, and this is performance F-Sport, more about straight line performance, but it does have very dynamic handling capabilities too, which I'll touch on in a second. But, it's just nice you have the beefier brakes here, considering you're hauling around, an extra 450 pounds or so here in this. It definitely feels good. And it's also a nice firm brake tone, even though this is a hybrid. I don't really feel too much like weirdness from the brake pedal or anything. It feels pretty consistent and very easy to modulate so far. Also, you might be able to hear, but there is some active sound control this vehicle does have, so it does pipe in a little bit through the speakers. That's only here in the 500s. The others do not do that. And I think it sounds fine. It doesn't sound artificial. Honestly, if you didn't tell me that it had it, I probably wouldn't have even paid attention to it. So, going on some corners here, and I have high hopes for the 500 version, because yes, even though it is a little bit heavier, you still do have the Michelin Pilot Sport 4 SUV tires. You also, again, have the wider track here, the longer wheelbase, and all those things, like I said, I appreciated in the regular 350s, but, having that, all that stuff here in this, plus the rearwheel steering, which you only get here in the 500h F-Sport Performance. That rearwheel steer can do, I believe, about 4 degrees of steering back there, and should really help this to be even more dynamic. I really love rearwheel steering in basically every application that I've seen it in. It's always makes for a better driving experience. So we're going to come up with some tighter corners here and test it out a little bit. Interestingly though, in the 500 here, steering seems to be a little bit lighter than it was in the 350. I'm not sure why that is, but I'm just noticing that here. And also, this has the adaptive dampers just like the 350. And here in this way they're tuned, still nice and tight, and does a really good job of controlling the body motions. You don't really have hardly any brake dive, and even with the extra thrust from this engine, it doesn't really shift around too much. But here's a nice tight corner. All right, so it's pretty good. There's a little bit of a little dip there and the little rise in the hill there, and it got stuck pretty well, I have to say. And this thing feels really dynamic. I'm pretty impressed. You know, I could definitely feel the weight in that corner for sure, a little bit more than I think I felt it obviously in the 350. So you do feel the extra weight here, but it certainly, you know, makes up for that and then some, you know, with the reversible steer. And just this thing feels so dynamic. It really is so impressive. And you know, if you're someone who, you know, likes, for example, the dynamic qualities of the RDX or the MDX, but you're looking for more power, you can just go for this. And I mean, the tires do have a good amount of grip. There's a nice improvement in grip over the regular all seasons on the 350 for sure. But it's still, you still aren't gonna, you know, forget that you're in an SUV and one that weighs, you know, 4750. There's definitely some mass here, but there's some limits for sure. Obviously, this is an RX, so I can't review this like a sports car. But for what it is, it's very engaging, very fun, dynamic, and totally can keep up with me here on a back road, as long as I'm mindful, again, of the weight and stuff. And the tires are protesting a tiny bit, but they're doing a really good job. And yeah, I'm having a blast with this thing, which, I mean, compared to the old generation RX, again, like I mentioned earlier, that just had a lot more body motions, a lot softer. This thing is so tight and a lot more car-like in its handling in the best way. But I mean, I'm just slicing and dicing this little windy road up, no problem, and it's keeping up with me at, you know, some good speeds here, and really doing a good job of you know, just hanging with me here. So I really do like this. It's a great setup. And I also have to add that, you know, even though this does use a 6-speed automatic, I'm noticing that power delivery seems just as strong as it did in the 350 as far as that turbo engine whenever that kicks on, just because those electric motors really, you know, fill in any kind of gap that you might have here with the 6-speed versus the 8 and the other. You know, I'm not noticing the 6-speed detracting from the experience. So I know a lot of people were a little bit surprised when they saw the 6-speed on the spec sheet here for this version, but it's perfectly suited for this application. Again, if it had faster shifts, I'd have no complaints with it whatsoever. But even with the slower manual shifts, it still, you know, does a really great job. Quick downshifts, I mean, very responsive. The second I start tipping into the gas, it starts, you know, giving me some strong acceleration, and this motor, you know, being nice and punchy means that, you know, even though there's 6 gears instead of 8, it really does a good job still of pulling nice and hard. One other interesting touch is whenever you're in sport mode there, it really doesn't act like a hybrid very much, at least as far as like kicking the engine off. It keeps the engine on, at least in my experience here, and you know, is always right there ready and waiting. So don't worry about this being a hybrid and trying to constantly hypermile. In sport mode, it's all about performance and doesn't care about any kind of economical behavior. But then whenever you go into the normal mode here now, I do have the engine off here, and it's, you know, doing a little bit of charging and going down hills, and it will, you know, kick on that gas engine when it needs to, and it still is, you know, pretty responsive even in this mode. And in normal mode here too, also, you know, a little bit of a softer damper setup now, just for kicks. I mean, it's still, yeah, there's a little bit of extra float there, so the adaptive dampers do certainly help. I'm noticing that here right off the bat. Is normal mode still is a little bit floaty, but you know, still again miles better than the old RX. Anyway, a ton of fun on a back road here in the 500h F Sport Performance. All right, so now I'm able to spend just a couple of minutes here in the 450h Plus plug-in hybrid version of the RX here, which will be available later on in the model year here. So it's not going to be available here in the initial rollout here, you know, with the other 3 powertrains. But whenever it does arrive, it'll most likely have a very similar setup to the NX. We don't actually have any specific specs yet for it, but in the NX, I already spent a week with the NX 450h Plus, and in that, you know, it's the same naturally aspirated 2.5 liter, same setup we have here in this. And in the NX, it makes about 300 horsepower and has, you know, about 33 miles of range or so. It'll probably be very similar here for the RX, but of course the specs could change for the RX. It could be different tuning, I don't know. And this one's actually a European spec as well, so we have our mileage rating here in kilometers, saying 19 kilometers here, with the battery a little bit over a half charge. So not sure exactly where it'll end up as far as actual, you know, quoted range and all of that, but just cruising through this winery here at low speed, which is really the strength of the plug-in hybrid, you know, is especially the low speed stuff. I'm cruising around here just in electric mode, and it's nice and quiet. Brake still feels nice and normal here, even, you know, with the plug-in hybrid. No weirdness or anything going on. But I'm gonna go ahead and put it up into the sport mode. It still does have the sport mode here for the 450h Plus, and let's turn on this back road and see how a plug-in hybrid version does. Here we go. All right. Nice, strong performance. honestly, off the line, it feels almost as punchy as the 500H version does. So I mean, nice strong electric motor, and yeah, I really like the plug-in hybrid setup in the NX. Also, the RAV4 Prime uses it. It's a real punchy electric motor that you can actually do, you know, full speed highway merges in. It's enough power to drive it like a fully electric vehicle. And here in this, still nice and punchy. It doesn't even need to turn on the gas engine here, even for like half throttle, giving you some good acceleration still from passing and stuff like that. It still can do all of that. And so I really love the way Toyota and Lexus do their plug-in hybrid, because it's not just there for, you know, some weak acceleration. It really gives you strong performance, so you truly can drive this like an electric vehicle. If you plug it in and you drive less than the quoted range every day, you know, you really could basically treat this as an electric vehicle. So if you're bummed there isn't a fully electric Lexus RX yet, this is going to be as close as you're going to get for now, and I think that really, you know, makes it a really great, you know, alternative though for people who do want that electrified component, but you still have the gas engine to back you up, so you can keep on driving as long as you need to. I'm not going to be able to do as much of the handling testing like I have been in the other RXs here today, but from what I can tell here so far, you know, it's definitely going to be a little on the softer side. This isn't an F Sport or anything. This is just a regular RX. So, you know, that means it's not going to have the same sportier suspension setup. I don't believe you can get the adaptive dampers here in the plug-in hybrid either. But yeah, it's really a solid amount of performance, and I'm really excited to try out this a little bit more in depth for a little bit longer here in the future, because I think potentially this could be kind of the sweet spot of the range, where you have more punch than the other RXs aside from the 500, but you know, you have the electric range, which you don't get in the 500, and obviously this is going to be less dynamic from a handling standpoint. But if you're looking for just good straight line performance and still just want a nice comfortable luxury SUV, I think this could really be a nice one, you know, between all of the different powertrains here. All right, so now we're in the 350h hybrid version, and I'm going to put it into its sport mode. I'm going to test out the acceleration here in this one. All right, still had enough power to spin the tires there for a split second. And gets up and goes really nicely. It's a good amount of power. So the hybrid is less powerful than it was for the previous generation, which was a 450h hybrid previously. So now it's the 350h hybrid, and it does 246 horsepower, 233 pound-feet of torque from a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. And so because it's a naturally aspirated engine, that means this one you can use for regular you know, gas in. So if you don't want to do premium like the others, you know, you can at least have the regular gas here. And this, of course, will be the best one from a fuel economy standpoint, getting 33 mpg combined, which is really impressive for a vehicle that's the class and size of vehicle this is, and the weight involved with these. You know, it's pretty good. And it's solid performance too. It's still a 7.4 seconds 0 to 60, which is, you know, totally fine for, you know, an average family crossover, and that's still only 0.2 seconds slower than the turbocharged 350. So pretty solid acceleration, and so I'm sure it'll be, you know, totally fine for the average commuter and, you know, someone who doesn't need a fast RX. And as far as curb weight goes for this one, it's also impressive that they have saved some weight here with the hybrid version as well. So it's only about 150 pounds heavier than the 350, the regular, you know, 350 version. That is one important thing with this, is that it only has an e-motor for all-wheel drive in the rear there. So it's dependent on that electric propulsion for the all-wheel drive system. There's no drive shaft going back there, but they always make sure that they keep enough power in the battery so that you always have all-wheel drive when you need it. So you're never going to find yourself in the middle of winter with a low hybrid battery and being stuck with front-wheel drive or something. It'll make sure that it keeps it topped off so that you always have four-wheel traction when you need it. All right, so now I'm back on the same windy road here in the 350h, and so again, no F-Sport performance or handling versions for the regular hybrid available here, so it is just the regular, normal, soft version of the RX as far as the suspension setup. There's no adaptive dampers here, no sporty tires. It's still 230. So setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low six. My first impressions are about this manual. So the clutch is actually not too heavy, not too light. It's kind of a nice, good feeling clutch. Has a fairly long throat to it, but not too bad. Pretty easy to use. Now there aren't any kind of manual aid assists. Like the thing though, the gates are pretty well defined for the shifter. But I've noticed whenever I'm going up to like third or fifth that it wants to always dip down. There's this little like spring-loaded part that helps you to have a lockout for reverse, and so it's just kind of funny though that even in the other gears, if you're shifting with a little bit more speed, it kind of wants to dip down. It's a little bit of a weird sensation. The shifter otherwise is okay. It's not Honda good or anything like that, but I think it feels pretty good. And even compared to the WRX STI transmission, I'd say that this is a little less weighty than that, but still feels pretty good. Other things that are great are visibility here in the Golf R. So, nice small dimensions, a huge windshield, pretty large side windows for a vehicle this small. I even like the little window here at the A-pillar. And view out of the back is great, of course, being a hatch and stuff. So very easy as far as all that stuff goes. Also, so I'm in the sport mode, which is what the mode that it normally starts in. You can have the comfort mode. There's also, in addition to the sport and comfort, you have a race mode as well as a drift mode and a Nürburgring mode. And I'll talk more about those modes in a little bit. You also do have a custom mode, so you can mix and match the various settings. But otherwise, so in sport mode here, the exhaust is in its quieter setting. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. Wow, wheel spin! Okay, there's a little bit of like a turbo lag sensation there for a second, and then it was also lighting up traction control and stuff, which was kind of a surprise considering this thing is all-wheel drive. Wow. And it feels pretty good. I also get a little crackle and pop out of the exhaust there in the back. Not super loud, but you do have some, and it's more exhaust noise than you get in a Civic Type R, for example, and actually a WRX STI. So I'll take it. Sounds pretty good. I do wish we got that European exhaust. I think that'd be even sweeter. But anyway, very strong performance. This thing is running the 4th generation. It's the EA888, and so it's the 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder, of course. It has 315 horsepower now and 280 pound-feet of torque here for the manual. If you go for the DSG automatic, you get 295 pound-feet of torque. And obviously the DSG is going to be the way to go if you want the fastest straight line acceleration. And they'll now do a 3.9 seconds 0 to 60 for the DSG. I didn't see any kind of quota time for the manual here, but I would safely assume something in the low to mid 4s is a good bet. And you also don't have any kind of like launch control or anything, I don't think, here with the manuals. That's only on the automatics. And going over, it's a little bit of a rougher road now. Not too much road noise for an economy car platform. But anyway, we're coming up some corners here, and let's see how the Golf R handles. So this one is actually on summer tires, even though I'm filming this video in January, believe it or not. They left the summer tires on. The Bridgestone S005s on this one. I saw that other Golf Rs have Pirelli, so I'm not sure what the tire situation is with this one here. But as far as the handling goes, thankfully it's 41 degrees here, so we still have some decent grip out of these summer tires. And man, very good. All right, so I could sense that it kind of has this little bit of a torque vectoring sensation here now. So this is a brand new all-wheel drive system here in this generation of the Golf R. So they got rid of the Haldex thing, so now you have a clutch pack there in the rear, and so it allows you to send up to 50% of the power to the rear. Get more pops out of that exhaust now. It's a little louder whenever you let off. But anyway, so it'll send 50% to the rear, and then the drift mode will send 100% of that 50% to the outside wheel, and that drift mode basically just allows it to rotate a little bit more. Now, it's not as crazy as like the drift mode you had in the Focus RS. That was able to send more power to the back. This isn't quite as extreme. And they also say it's for off-road use, and there's a bunch of disclaimers and stuff like that. But just leaving it here in the race mode, you still have that torque vectoring thing going on there in the back. And it felt pretty neutral to me. I'll continue to push it here around some more corners and test it a little bit more. That exhaust just randomly will just pop and just sound like a gunshot going off back there. But it's like kind of random. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of strange. So I guess there's just an exact RPM you have to hit in order to get those louder crackles and pops. Interesting. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot of fun. These also are pretty light, all things considered. So these weigh at 3,417 pounds for the manual. You gain about 64 pounds with the DSG. So right around 3,400 pounds for a vehicle that's turbocharged and all-wheel drive is, pretty good feat. I mean, it's pretty impressive. So I'm glad they kept it nice and light. It doesn't seem like they actually tried too hard to keep the weight down, though, because, for example, I just popped the hood, and the hood is so heavy, it feels like it's made out of cast iron or something, because it's like, I mean, if you want to save like 100 pounds off the nose, just swap on a carbon fiber hood and you'll immediately get a huge weight savings, because I don't know why they have a hood that feels like it's from the 1950s on this thing, but anyway, just happy that overall still it is nice and light. Definitely some easy weight savings there right on the table if you want for the aftermarket. But other things here, really nice strong power, but I do wish the exhaust was throatier for sure, because I feel like I'm still hearing mostly like induction mode out of the front. Obviously, again, another easy fix in the aftermarket, but with this active exhaust I was hoping for more. So maybe we'll try, there's also this Nürburgring mode. When I was sitting in park, it seemed a little bit louder, at least at idle. Doesn't seem to do anything here, but as far as the Nürburgring mode, that is one other interesting mode here where they actually custom tailor that setting to have softer dampers, but still have everything else nice and sharp, and it's optimized obviously for the Nürburgring is what they say. So it's cool to have that mode as well, in addition to, again, the drift mode, custom mode. And the custom mode, by the way, you can change all kinds of stuff. You can change, you know, of course, the adaptive dampers. You can change, you know, the settings for the exhaust, all those types of things. Yeah, let's do another acceleration here. This time I got the wheels turned a little bit. Yeah, it's fun. It's good amount of punch for sure. Oh man, this thing. It is sweet for sure. So other things here that they changed. So like I said, you have the adaptive dampers here in the Golf R, like you've always had here in the past couple of generations. And in this version, you know, I love that, again, you can change it up with the custom modes. You can have it as soft or as stiff as you want. But even here in the race mode, which is, you know, the stiffer mode here, going over bumps and stuff, it's not that bad. So it's not jarring or anything even in this race mode, which is nice. So if you do want to have the sportiest settings, you know, you have you know, still a ride that's not going to beat you up. And also it's nice that you can actually go and hit this R button on the steering wheel to immediately go straight into that race mode. So if you just want to do that for a quick little spurt and then go back, you can, you know, have that adjustability there nice and easy. But adaptive dampers definitely seem to do a good job of keeping this thing nice and flat. In addition to that, there's also 10% stiffer springs all around, as well as a stiffer roll bar up front. And there's also more negative camber than before. So they really were, you know, trying to just give this thing every handling edge they could. You don't really hear about car companies increasing the camber on, you know, vehicles whenever they're changing stuff up. By the way, these tires are 235 wide for these Bridgestones, so not super wide or super meaty or anything these days. There's some others that, you know, even do like 245, but I mean, the 235 still seems to have plenty of grip here, and it still gives it a little bit of a playful character. I'm going to definitely push it around a few more corners here and see if we can provoke it a little bit more. Wow, yeah, so I'm really kind of just trying to provoke understeer in this car, and it still stays pretty flat and neutral. I'm pretty impressed. I saw some other reports saying it will understeer, and I'm sure if you're really at the limit, this thing will understeer. But, you know, driving spiritedly on my favorite back road here, I'm not really sensing any printouts to understeer or anything. And it definitely feels a little bit better than the previous generation Golf R in my experience. Yeah, just really wants to dive in. Nice quick steering, and this corner always provokes understeer. Pretty neutral to me. I mean, you're going to be going way, way faster on really tight corners in order to get this thing to understeer. It does a really good job, and yeah, I'm very impressed with the way this thing handles. But, you know, now, so I'm still in race mode here. We're going to deliberately hit some of these potholes. Wow! All right! And, you know, I mean, yeah, it's a tiny bit on the firm side, but honestly, I'd say that even in race mode, this feels a tiny bit softer than, for example, a Civic Si or something, which isn't really a competitor to this, but that's just something I've been driving recently. And I will say that the dampers definitely have less range than they do in the Civic Type R. So the Civic Type R, that adaptive damper system is mind-blowing, because that thing goes from like super stiff, like way stiffer than this R mode, and then in the comfort mode, it glides over everything. And the comfort mode in this is also pretty nice, but it definitely isn't as buttery soft as the Type R. So I think I'm more impressed with the adaptive dampers than the Type R and their range of function. And whenever you want to haul this power down to a stop, you actually have bigger brakes, or the cross-drove 14.1-inch rotors up front now, on the Golf R, so they look great, and there's plenty of braking capability. I didn't feel any kind of weakness out of the brakes, not like I was expecting to. They feel very pumped, very, very good. Throttle response is also nice and sharp, even in just the normal sport mode here. It really is super responsive. That actually really helps with the rev matching and with just, using the manual, because it's just a very, very eager but not over eager throttle. It's just kind of a sweet spot with the way they did the throttle response here in this. Also brakes, in addition to the brakes feeling nice and strong, you have a good amount of bite right towards the top of the pedal, and so they feel very nice and responsive as well. And so the way they did all the driving stuff is really nice. Steering has a nice weight to it here, even in just the regular sport mode. And so
this is Y: The Last Man, One Small Step, still under the DC Comics imprint of Vertigo, and still written and penciled by Brian K. Vaughan and Pia Guerra, respectively. And yes, you may notice how this is book 3 up there in the corner, but seeing as how this isn't the deluxe edition, it picks up where book 1 of the deluxe edition left off, with Y: The Last Man number 11 through 17. So Yorick is still going around the US, trying to get to Dr. Mann's lab in California. And the book even gives a nice little summary in the front. I quite like it when books do that. Nothing much will jump out at you from the start if you read the previous book, or books, except a kinda sorta breaking of the fourth wall. This occurs again in that kinda sorta fashion later on in the book, and is one of the few things in really technical terms that changes between the previous books. Other than that, all the same stuff is here outside of actual plot elements. Art is just as good, but maybe a little less. Making you want to read more makes the book not a bore. That's my new slogan. First 10 issues of the series. Gives a nice summary, but it doesn't beat actually reading the story to get the context of this book. And by the way, this is by far my favorite cover in the series so far.
This year. Nevertheless, this is confirmation. The Russian defense minister said that now Belarus has the capability to use Iskander-M missiles.
Alright, so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice look. First off, visibility is really great. You have a nice large windshield, a pretty thin A-pillars, and a great view out of the back. Other things here, though, is I'm actually really impressed by the power of the electric motor. On its own, it does 43 horsepower and 125 pound-feet of torque, which doesn't sound like a ton, but considering this thing only weighs about 3,200 pounds, you don't need a ton of grunt to get up and go at low speeds. And so I've been impressed compared to the average hybrid that usually doesn't have very much grunt before it has to kick on the gas engine. This has a good amount of grunt that I've been able to accelerate at reasonably slow paces, up to about 25 miles per hour or so, with that electric motor doing all the work. And so if you're not in a hurry and you're just, casually driving around, I was actually impressed at just how much driving I could actually do in electric mode here with just the regular hybrid version. So that was one thing I was really impressed by. Other things here that are pretty good. So you have a nice responsive brake pedal that feels natural and doesn't really give me any variability like some other hybrids do sometimes. And so it was pretty, good to use that. Another thing is the throttle response is pretty good for the most part, since we have an axially aspirated engine and you have those electric motors kicking in. It's usually pretty responsive, but the one downfall of this whole powertrain setup, in my opinion, is this 6-speed dual clutch automatic transmission. There's been a few times where I've caught it out of gear, and unfortunately this car only has an eco mode and a sport mode. There's no normal mode. So in eco mode, I found that it's tuned to really try and resist the downshift, and so there's been a lot of times where I've been waiting to be like, come on, and then it decides to go. And let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it accelerates. And here we go. So that electric motor kicks in, and it is very responsive in that sport mode. It immediately leapt into action there, and it accelerates fairly well for what it is. Again, the goal of this vehicle is high miles per gallon, not performance, not acceleration. And so as a result, you have a total of 139 horsepower from a 1.6 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, combined with that electric motor, which on its own is 43 horsepower, but again, combined it's 139 horsepower total, and all total it's 195 pound-feet of torque. If you want more power, the plug-in hybrid version gives you 180 horsepower using the same engine but with a more powerful powerful electric motor, and then there's also the electric version with 201 horsepower, which would be the quickest of the bunch. And I did review the previous generation Niro EV, which had the same kind of setup for the most part, and it was pretty sporty, and I was really impressed with that. So I think that would definitely be the most exciting one to go for the electric one. But the thing is, it's an 8.9 seconds 0 to 60 time for the regular hybrid version here. And that is, a little slower than the average family crossover. It isn't painfully slow if you're used to usual and stuff like this and you're not an enthusiast that's into sports cars or anything. But, you definitely have to make sure that you are very deliberate about, when you accelerate, how you merge. You have to just kind of pre-plan those things a little bit. You don't have plentiful power, I'd say. And especially, with the gas engine itself only doing about 106 horsepower on its own, it really has to work hard whenever you're beyond those low speeds where the electric motor can help you out a little bit more. So at higher speeds, that's where it really starts to show the lack of power a little bit. But other things here, though, so we're on this little bit of a rougher road that generates some road noise typically. And it is a little on the noisy side. I did see the car and driver actually, in their measurements, measured that this is noisier inside than the previous generation for some reason. And so, just keep that in mind. You're going from the old one to the new one. If it sounds a little noisier inside, that's, partially why. But I think it's, average for this segment and still kind of appropriate for, vehicles like this that are not a luxury vehicle or anything like that. But anyway, we're kind of some corners here, and let's see how the handling is here in the Niro Hybrid. So in sport mode here, you have slightly heavier steering, and of course that more aggressive throttle response and stuff. And as far as the handling goes, it's not bad. Obviously, we're not on sporty tires or anything. They're 225 watt, which isn't too bad, honestly, but they're just, average, all-season kind of tires here. So not a ton of grip. And I do feel that it wants to push a little bit, and it certainly leans towards understeer, and the limits are fairly low, but it's not bad. Not the sportiest thing out there. I think if you want a sportier hybrid, the new Prius is definitely the way to go. It's much faster, handles better, as long as you can give up the extra practicality you get here in the Niro. It's going to be the way to go for those who do want something a little sportier. But as far as this goes for the average commuter, it's going to be totally fine. The handling is totally fine. It's not sloppy or anything. It's still nice and tight with its handling. It's very composed, and it's still very good. It's just, it doesn't impress me, but it certainly doesn't really let me down either. It's just kind of par for the course, what you'd expect out of something like this, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think handling is totally fine, and again, the fact that we kept it, just over 3,200 pounds means it's pretty nice and light, which is refreshing these days with so many other vehicles, being so heavy and loaded. It's really great they kept the weight down in these. And with this new generation Niro, you do have a wheelbase that's about an inch longer than before, and so that'll certainly help to give you more stable and planted handling as well. One other interesting thing I wanted to add, though, about the driving experience here in the Niro is that you can kind of change it up a little bit. So you have these paddle shifters here on the back of the steering wheel, and they have two different purposes. Whenever you do have the gas engine on, they do function as paddle shifters for the 6-speed automatic, and you can, shift manually if you'd like. Whenever it's in electric mode, they actually turn into regen paddles, and you can increase the amount of regen that it's doing while you're in that EV mode. And so if you're coasting down a hill and you want to get a little bit of extra battery juice out of this braking and the downhill motion and things like that, you just crank that up there with the paddle shifters, and it gives you that extra little bit of regen, which is really cool. I love that customization. I think it makes a lot of sense and helps you to really maximize your efficiency. If you're someone who wants to be an active participant in that hypermiling and that maximizing of your efficiency, it's really fun to be able to play with the paddles and do that. But here we go, merging onto the highway. For the amount of power that it has, though, I think it actually is pretty respectable. And you just don't want to be pulling out in front of 18-wheelers or anything like that. But aside from that, it's going to be totally fine for your average commuter. But now we're out on the highway here, and I have it in the highway drive assist mode, which is the adaptive cruise control with lane keeping assist. And this system, so if you've watched any other Kia and Hyundai reviews in the past few years, the highway drive assist system isn't one of the best systems out there in my opinion. It has let me down on several occasions where it doesn't hold the lane, and it's a little tricky to tell when it's actually giving you assistance and when it isn't. It's not very clear about that. And so as far as the Niro goes, in my experience here this week, I've already been driving this vehicle for a whole week, and it hasn't really let me down. It's been fine in this vehicle, and this goes to show with these vehicles, it depends on the kind of roads you're on, the circumstances, whether the sun's glaring at the camera or not. There's all kinds of variables at play here, how the roads are painted, all of that kind of stuff as far as how the system will perform. But I'm just here to say that It does work pretty good most of the time. The adaptive cruise system works fine otherwise. It's really the lane keeping assist is the only part that I ever have an issue with. And even that, like I said, does work pretty well sometimes. It's just not totally reliable, and so therefore I don't trust it as much as I trust some of the other lane keep assist systems out there. But as we're coming up to a gentle corner here now, we can test it out. And while we are testing it out here, one other thing too is out on the highway here, you do have some road noise for sure. It's not super quiet here or anything, but again, for this.
Detroit in January may not be high on your must-visit list, but everyone that is anyone in the automotive world was on hand for the opening of the 2002 North American International Auto Show. While the volume was turned down a bit on traditional hoopla, the giant show still had a sense of resurgence and patriotism. That was evident from the first event of the day with the pick of the 2002 North American Car and Truck of the Year Awards. All 6 finalists voted on by 49 top auto writers were American-made, with the Chevrolet Trailblazer taking home the truck honors and the Tennessee-built Nissan Altima capturing the coveted car prize. The patriotic fervor gained momentum next with a variety of tantalizing concepts from General Motors. Each was designed with possible production in mind, including the body-on-frame Chevrolet Bel Air. Under its flowing 50s vintage convertible lines lies a 21st century 3.5-liter all-aluminum twin-cam 5-cylinder engine that will be used in Chevy's next-generation compact pickups. Pontiac took a more modern approach to a convertible with its cladding-free Solstice Roadster. Developed in record time, initial reaction inside GM was so strong that a Solstice Coupe was also commissioned. Using mostly off-the-shelf parts, this 240-horsepower supercharged duet could become a $25,000 reality if the show public agrees. Less likely for showrooms, but no less intriguing, is the Cadillac CN. This mid-engine V12 supercar shapes its carbon fiber panels with Cadillac's new crisp edge styling. The 750-horsepower direct-injection 7.5-liter engine also uses displacement on demand to shut off 6 cylinders under light loads. But GM's most adventurous concept would forever change cars as we know them. The autonomy concept is a hydrogen fuel cell enclosed in a skateboard-like chassis that could accept a variety of plug-in bodies. The idea built lots of vehicle types from a common chassis to reduce fuel cell cost. This is real science fiction, but it may be here sooner than you think. A decidedly youthful theme marked the best Chrysler concepts in years. Following the LA Auto Show debut of the Jeep Willys 2, Detroit found its way with the Jeep Compass. Think of the Compass as an all-terrain rally car, and with its Liberty-based chassis and V6, it could also go into production anytime. The son of Power Wagon styling of the Dodge M80 pickup will likely show up on the next Dakota. With so many of the millennial generation craving small pickups with surf-to-snow capabilities, M80 styling could explode the compact truck market. But if we had to pick one concept to drive home, it would be the Dodge Razor. Recalling bug-eyed British sports cars of the 1960s, the minimalist Razor has a turbocharged 4 but no trunk, spare tire, or radio. Chrysler figures the young buyers that are able to squeeze into the Razor will want their own music source. No matter what you call them, crossovers, segment busters, or just tall wagons, all-wheel drive sport utility derivatives were high on every vehicle maker's wish list. We're about 18 months away from this intriguing 2004 Chrysler Pacifica, a V6 minivan-based SUV with the posh of many luxury imports but at 2/3 the price. Honda's US-made 2003 Pilot SUV will be here this summer. Like the Acura MDX, the Pilot is based on the Odyssey minivan, a 3.5-liter V6 with a 5-speed automatic or standard with available automatic 4-wheel drive. Seating is for 8 with 2 rows of split folding seats. Decidedly car-based is the Volvo XC90. The brand's first SUV inflates the familiar Volvo wagon styling into a handsome, smart, and tidy people mover that includes advanced electronic rollover protection and side curtains for all 3 rows of seats. Power will be the same turbocharged 6-cylinder used in the S80 luxury sedan when this $35,000 suite arrives in dealers late this year. January 2003 will see the arrival of the imported GX470, one of many premium-priced SUVs unveiled at the show. Using a new body-on-frame, the V8-powered GX470 puts 8 seats in an SUV sized between the RX300 and the LX470. Mechanics include full-time four-wheel drive, variable ride height, and downhill assist control that automatically applies the brakes to slow descents. The Lexus will do battle with this 2004 Infiniti FX45. Far less angular than last year's concept, a shape dubbed the Bionic Cheetah covers seating for 5, every electronic doodad you can think of, and a 300-plus horsepower V8 with all-wheel drive. While still a concept, the Mercedes-Benz Vision GST gives us a good hint of the replacement for the M-Class. The Grand Sports Tour's dramatic speeding shape will surround a change from body-on-frame to unitized chassis. Seating for 6, this V8 is more all-weather mover than all-terrain shaker and could give the BMW X5 real competition. Another German crossover concept is this Volkswagen Magellan. Lower and more streetwise than VW's forthcoming Touareg SUV collaboration with Porsche, the multi-talented Magellan has rally car wheel arches aside a spacious and versatile cabin. Potential power includes a 275 horsepower W8 engine. On a smaller scale, the multi-dimensional 2003 Suzuki Aereo SX and sedan will arrive this spring. With 141 horsepower on tap, the SX, or Sports Crossover, is front or all-wheel drive, and it follows Toyota's Matrix and Pontiac's Vibe as spicy 5-doors aimed at the youth market. While Isuzu prepares for the fall introduction of their GM-built Ascender SUV, they also showed how much versatility resides in the existing Axiom. A trio of imaginative concepts included the Axiom XST Crew Cab Pickup, XSR Roadster, and the supercharged 275 horsepower XSF. Subaru continues to show body frame, four-wheel independent suspension, and a BMW 4.4-liter V8. U.S. sales begin in June with a blue-blooded $70,000 admission price. But where are the new cars at this new car show? Well, we'll show you in a few minutes when we return to the 2002 North American International Auto Show.
Recognize the admission of Finland and Sweden to NATO, because we all know that, looking from an historical perspective, NATO members have brought their national issues to the...
So come drive with us next.
Motor Week, television's original automotive magazine. Brought to you by
Pep Boys, we're car people. Motor Week starting.
It's my kind of show.
It's our kind of show. All about cars and trucks.
The cool stuff people put on their cars and trucks.
And there are tips on tires and service, and maybe we should just watch.
I agree.
Right with you.
And by
What are you looking for? eBay Motors.
your host for Motor Week, John Davis.
Well, hello and welcome to the start of the 23rd season of Motor Week. We're glad to have you with us. Jaguar is a car company with a distinguished history and a strong sense of tradition. But no matter how storied the past, between traditional style and technical innovation. So let's see how they did. The Jaguar XJ series has been prowling U.S. roads since 1968 with a grace and poise befitting its English heritage. That character is reflected in the 2004 XJ series, but this cat is all new and totally modern from nose to tail. Unlike previous XJs, its skeleton is all aluminum. This lighter, stiffer monocoque is assembled with rivets and cutting-edge adhesive bonding. All XJs now ride on a long 119.4-inch wheelbase. Our car's Vanden Plas badge, which used to indicate an extended wheelbase, now simply means the most opulent interior. The new cat's legs are more athletic with double wishbone air suspension, lots of aluminum links borrowed from the S-Class, and the latest version of Jaguar's CATS, Computer Active Technology Suspension Automatic Damping System. The XJ then connects with the road through 17, 18, and on the XJR, 19-inch wheels. The heart of the new XJ series is a 4.2-liter V8 engine that also is shared with the S-Type and XK series. In the XJ8 in our Vanden Plas, it generates 294 horsepower and 303 pound-feet of torque. In the supercharged XJR, this dual-cam 32-valve beast roars out 390 horsepower and 399 pound-feet of torque. The transmission, a 6-speed automatic with manual shift override, complete with oddball J-gate shifter, is also shared with the XK and S-Type. With the V8 growling, our Vanden Plas leaps to 60 in 6.9 seconds and dashes through the quarter mile in 15.2 seconds at 95 miles per hour. Acceleration is deceptively smooth. The engine has a polished delivery with no peaks or valleys in the rev band. Shifts are almost invisible even under hard acceleration. In the quarters, our Vanden Plas feels well planted if quite soft. Its 3,803 pound weight is about 200 less than last year as the alloy chassis and suspension greatly improve weight distribution. This means faster, lighter response to driver inputs. The new XJ displays less front plow and more mid-corner grip. Turn-in is quicker, but while the variable ratio rack and pinion steering is also quicker, it's still short on feel. For extra safety, Jaguar has fitted all new XJs with both traction and dynamic stability control. Braking is by four-wheel disc. Stopping distances average the longish but rock-solid 136 feet thanks to a Tevis 4-channel ABS system with yaw control. Pedal feel is also soft. Tradition dictates that all XJs display a classic leather and wood-lined cabin that has gained some in size. But even with more wheelbase and 2 inches more front legroom, the front footwells are still a little cozy for those 6 foot and over. Seats do, however, provide 12-way power adjustments with memory. Linked to the power tilt telescoping steering wheel that's also available with heat, and to the adjustable foot pedals. The dash with its lovely walnut trim boasts a clean, logical, timeless layout, while the analog gauges are easy to read but incomplete. Naturally, there's a navigation system available. Our Vanden Plas included the optional split rear bench with electric recline and lumbar adjust. While legroom is down from the previous Vanden Plas, it is still among the most generous 6 cubic feet. Healthy also describes prices, which start at $59,995 for the XJ8. Our super posh Vanden Plas is based at $68,995, while the supercharged XJR starts its growl for $74,995. Yet even the Top Cat XJR undercuts a Mercedes-Benz S500 by more than $8,000. The 2004 Jaguar XJ series are sedans with a history that it proudly acknowledges with style and luxury. But thanks to its intelligent, cutting-edge engineering, performance, and convenience features, it's a cat with a very bright future as well.
He didn't say that they were supplied, of course, with nuclear munitions, but he said that the systems themselves...
Platform of the alliance whenever any particular topic came to the agenda.
Let's to thank one of our sponsors, Farmers Insurance.
It's all you.
No, I insist.
It's your turn.
Nope, I think it's your turn.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. Go.
I appreciate your appreciation. It fills me.
Safe drivers save money with Farmers.
Just for driving safely?
It's a Farmers policy perk. Get Farmers and you can get a safe driver discount simply for having a clean driving record for 3 years.
Come on. After you.
After you.
Safety first.
Get a whole lot of something with Farmers policy perks.
We are farmers. Bum, bum.